I was 20 years old. I was drafted in 1966, September. I didn't really realize this till after I came home and probably for quite a few years, but my sister was extremely worried and she wound up getting involved in the anti-war movement back then. And she has been an activist all her life. I was a little nervous, apprehensive. Of course, you're not knowing what's going to happen, where you're going to wind up. What you're getting at is more true in guys that are in combat roles because they're relying on their buddies for, you know, their survival. And they have a lot closer relationship than someone who's just, working. Guys that are, that are in combat, especially in a situation like Vietnam, where, in my opinion, we had no business there in the first place. Okay, and you're fighting an insurrection, and we have the same thing going on right now in Afghanistan, and the way it really seems to me is, after so long you're in a country, be it Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, no matter what reason you have for going into that country, what it all boils down to in the end is the insurgents are fighting with you because you're in their country. And you're fighting with them to protect yourself and your buddies. When you register for the draft, they look you over, and I was 1A, which was, eligible. And I can remember the day I got my draft notice, and I wasn't really surprised, because it was pretty common, and a lot of my friends were in the same boat. Well, we were guarding this ammunition. Naturally, we're out there all night long, and we were guarding it for a reason. Right before I got in country, the sappers come in and blew up a couple of pads of ammunition, okay? And you could see the results of these explosions, and you knew it was serious because we could see the helicopters beyond our perimeter, and we had some deaths in our units with guys falling asleep, suicide. The fellow that fell asleep, now he laid his head down on the ground in front of a truck tire, and the truck started up and left and killed him. Now, who in their right mind would pick a place like that to lay down? Whether he did it unconsciously or who knows. Nobody, that's one of the questions nobody will ever know. And we had civilian contractors that were murdered, but a civilian contractor isn't a combatant. And, this particular fellow that I knew, they found him all sliced up, right at the perimeter. One of my classmates was killed a mile away from where, my station was. And that, to me, at that time seemed pretty calm, but, things changed. And also, our KPs that we had, they lived in a little village alongside of Benoit called Cogido. And I found out probably a year and a half after I come home that during the Tet Offensive, they practically destroyed Cogido because it was considered a VC stronghold. So, they were civilian employees. They were working for us in the day and aiding and abetting the enemy. At night they would steal food, and so, where it wound up, feeding the enemy. I was working with them. It didn't seem like they seemed like pretty friendly towards us, but in reality they were helping the enemy. America, we went to Vietnam. We were there because our politicians were telling us about the domino theory. If Vietnam falls, all of Southeast Asia is going to fall. Okay, well, when you look at what happened to Russia, our biggest enemy during the Cold War, they just evaporated, So do you believe the domino theory? I don't. I don't think that we should send our soldiers in anywhere except as a last resort. You know, we're talking a long time ago, the Vietnam War, and these fellows are still affected by it. And when I was a kid, I never really thought about the World War II veterans. You know, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and the World War II was, 10 years prior. And I thought, well, what are they still talking about this war for? It's over. But guess what? How long's the Vietnam War been over? Quite a while. I'm at 40 years. And these guys are still affected by it. I feel very fortunate that I went through what I went through without anybody trying to kill me, Or I have a combat veteran who was a good friend of mine who just passed away recently, and I was able to talk to him on his deathbed virtually. And one of the things he said was that he killed a person in Vietnam, and he still thinks about it. For our country, I do feel regret because I think we were misled into going there, and 58,000 guys didn't come back. I was drafted September 6th of 1966. I went to Vietnam February 7th, 1967. I come home February 7th, 1968. I was discharged from Fort Bragg September 6th, 1968. Right before they let me go, a sergeant calls me in and says, all right, he said, sign this form. I said, sign what form? What are you talking about? He said, it says you had your reenlistment talk and you declined. I said, but I didn't have a reenlistment talk. He said, look, asshole, we don't want you and you don't want us. Just sign the thing. It's a formality. I said, okay. Don't believe everything you hear. Investigate for yourself. Because, if you just go with the crowd, you're liable to be misled.